You are listening to the Maple Footy Podcast, the unofficial football podcast of the North. I'm your host, Sam Little. Find me on socials at SamLittle44 and the podcast at Maple Footy Pod. And now there's nothing left to say except for sit back, enjoy, and welcome to the show.
Hello, yes, and welcome back to the Maple Footy Podcast. And yeah, another week. We are in the last few weeks of the Premier League, English Premier League, even though the CPL season has only just started, a month ago? Yeah, about a month ago-ish. We are rapidly coming to the end of the Premier League season, and while relegation and the title have all been decided, Europe is still wide open. Literally no other team outside of Liverpool have been confirmed for Champions League. Mathematically, of course. You can probably see Arsenal 95% certainty that they will be playing Champions League. But even, take Arsenal and Liverpool. Even outside of them, we still got things to talk about when it comes to Champions League nights. But before we get into that, of course, you know me. You know we got to start with the Maple Start. So why not start there? Since we're already kind of starting in England, why not stay in England for just this moment before we relocate back to England after the Maple Start has concluded? But there is a Liverpool player who has set the world alight, and she is Canadian, and it is her debut season, and talk about a great way to make a great first impression, because she has won Young Player of the Year and Players Player of the Year for Liverpool women. It is Olivia Smith, so congratulations to her. That's absolutely massive. We have a lot of young Canadian women kind of coming up right now and doing very, very well. Of course, you have Olivia Smith, even people like Grosso and Heidema who have been in the team for a long time but are still they're under 24 still, under 25 still. That's wild. So Olivia Smith, that's absolutely massive. Good for her. Congratulations to her. And yeah, hopefully next season is even better for her. Maybe some more goals, some more assists, more appearances, even more awards at the end of the season. Who knows? But yeah, definitely congratulations to her. That's absolutely massive. Speaking of a man, we were just speaking of a woman. Now we're going to speak of a man in England. His name is Owen Goodman, and I don't usually talk about potential duels for Canada because I don't want to get everyone's hopes up of a great player that we may or may not have. But I will kind of break my rule this one time because Owen Goodman, who is on loan from Crystal Palace to Wimbledon, has made the EFL team of the season. So just if he does end up playing for Canada, which he has stated it is his dream to play for Canada, so please, Jesse Marsh, call him up and cap tie him. That is just another goalkeeper. Once again, if everything goes in the way of Canada, he's just another great goalkeeper that we could have in between the sticks for years to come. So that's absolutely massive. And yeah, definitely all the best to him next season. I could be wrong. I don't think he will be Palace's starting goalkeeper next season. It wouldn't surprise me with a loan or a potential sale from Crystal Palace, maybe cash in if he's not going to be their number one. And for his sake, obviously as a goalkeeper, you want to play as much as you can. So, hey, hopefully a good team comes in for him. If that is the case, that's just me speculating. There's no at least that I've seen, there's no rumors or links or nothing like that. But we'll kind of move away from England for the time being, talk about the goings-on in France, as Jonathan David captained Lille for what could be potentially his final match for the club. That Lille, of course, have one more game left in the season, but he captained them. They did sadly lose, but yeah, it could be his final match for the club. I think it's a nice gesture for him to get the armband after everything he's done for the club. I'm obviously not a Lille fan, but I feel pretty comfortable in saying that he probably has to go down as a legend for the club. He is the all-time leading goal scorer for them, played a crucial part in them winning the league all those years ago, and has done a lot in his time with Lille. And speaking of Jonathan David and potentially leaving, he is, of course, going to be a free agent because his contract is running out. Another team has entered the Jonathan David race, and apparently it's quite serious. They've sent over a big-time proposal for him. It is Napoli from the Serie A, who are potentially on course to win the Serie A for the second time in, would that be the second time in 3 years? I think so. So he could be joining the Serie A champs if, of course, Napoli do clinch it. And yeah, not surprised that it's Italy. I was thinking maybe like an Inter, Juventus, or an AC Milan. But Napoli is a good spot to end up. If I'm Chelsea, I would be after Jonathan David. But we'll get into Chelsea a little bit more. Elsewhere in France, Kone had the start against Nice, and they won. So Kone beat Bombito, and I mean that kind of puts a chink in the armor of Nice's hopes to qualify for Champions League. For Kone, it's nothing more than getting some minutes under his legs, as he has still found it hard to break into the starting 11, and I'll be very interested to see what his summer looks like. Will he be going back to Marseille after his loan ends? Will Marseille be looking to sell him? I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of question marks around Ismail Kone, and we'll just have to wait and see, obviously. But it wasn't all terrible for some Canadian boys, since David and Bombito both lost. Jared Cornelius and Marseille did win, and they have qualified for Champions League next season. So congratulations to Jared Cornelius. If he does, of course, stick around with Marseille, he will be playing Champions League nights, and I think that's phenomenal. Nothing less than what he deserves. He absolutely deserves this. So congratulations to him. I absolutely love Derek Cornelius, his story, his just everything about him. I think he's great, and I'm very happy with him getting that moment. So moving away from Europe now, we're coming to the MLS. Our three Canadian clubs, of course. As I'm recording this, Vancouver Whitecaps have not played yet. So if they do win, it would be a weekend where all three Canadian teams won. If they lose, it would be kind of surprising that they're the Canadian team that lost this weekend in the MLS. But hey-ho, who knows? So starting with TFC, they got their first home win of the season, and I believe that was their first home win since September. That could be wrong, but I know it's been a long time, and it was dating back to well before the season ended last year. So, yeah. I mean, Theo Corbin comes up big again. What did I say all those weeks ago? TFC fans, be patient with him. I do think that there is a player there, and since then, I think he has done very well, excluding that penalty in the Canadian Championship. But yeah, outside that, I think he's really kind of found his feet at TFC at the moment. It was a great assist for him, a great ball in for Lorenzo Insigne. We don't give him credit on that one. And then, of course, the second goal was an own goal by DC United. But hey, a win's a win for TFC at the moment. And yeah, I mean, as I've kind of been saying, I don't think it really much changes the trajectory of their season. But, you know, maybe it does. Maybe. But yeah, celebrate the win, I would say. And I'm very happy for Theo Corbeanu. And then, of course, Montreal. Montreal also won last night by a score of 1-0. That is their first MLS win of the season, so that is good for them, building just a little bit of momentum, you could say, having won in the Canadian Championship last week and now winning their first MLS game of the season this week. So yay? Question mark? Kind of like TFC. I don't think it really changes much for them in terms of their MLS season, but of course they are still in Can Champ, so that is still something to play for Montreal for the remainder of the season and their time in the competition. Hopefully that time isn't super long, because hopefully Forge gets the dub over them. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Forge, by the way, were phenomenal against Halifax midweek, and I'm very looking forward to them playing against Montreal. So yeah. And then elsewhere in the MLS, Tani Oluwaseyi picked up an assist versus Inter Miami as they won 4-1. That's crazy. Yeah, good. good on you, Minnesota. Dane St. Clair, of course, only conceding the one to Inter Miami. Elsewhere, Kyle Hebert got a goal in a 2-1 loss to San Diego, which is a shame, but I'm a big fan of Kyle Hebert, so I had to mention his goal here. And then Jacob Schaffelberg got his first goal of the season, and by the way, it was a banger, in a 2-1 win over Charlotte, and it was the winner for Nashville. So that's absolutely massive. And then Crepeau and Kamal kept a clean sheet last night in their match against Sporting Kansas City by a score of 1-0. So yeah, congratulations to Maxime Crepeau and Kamal Miller. I'm a big fan, as you well know if you have listened to this podcast. I'm a big fan of both those players. So anytime they do anything remotely positive, I will definitely be telling you about it. All right, CPL time. Only 3 matches this weekend. Forge and Vancouver did not play this round of games. So let's talk a little bit about some history that was made by Atletico Ottawa, and more specifically, history made by Sam Salter, who is the first CPL player to ever get 4 goals in one match. And they were all very nice, by the way. 4 goals, and each of them were very nice. So congratulations to Sam Salter, because that is a very cool piece of history, I would say, to have. Not often do you get to say that you were the first guy in a league to be the first to score 4 goals. So that's absolutely massive. Good for him. And Atletico Ottawa continuing this insane tear that they're on. David Rodriguez still looks great. Manny Aparicio looks like he's controlling the midfield. They look very good. The only downside for Atletico Ottawa at the moment is that they've just lost Didic for the next number of months. I had mentioned last weekend that he went off hurt, and it happened to be very serious. Apparently, he's getting surgery. I saw it was a leg injury. I didn't see more specific than that. So if you do know what the specifics are, then maybe let me know. But, of course, all the best to him. He's a great player, and it is a shame to see someone season kind of ripped apart by a fluke injury, because that's all it was just a fluke injury. And it's a shame, right? But injuries, of course, sadly, as we well know, are a part of the game. But yeah, it still sucks. So really, that is, in all fairness, the only downside for Atletico Ottawa's amazing start to the season. They've been great, currently leading the table as well. And they made Valor look very much second best on the day. Valor sitting bottom of the table with 1 point and five games played from that, of course. Then you have Atletico Ottawa, who are first with 16 points and 6 games played. The next closest to them are Halifax, and then behind them is Forge. Halifax on 11 points, Forge on 9, but it is good to note that Forge have only played 5 in comparison to Halifax and Ottawa's 6. But yeah, Ottawa have been, so far at least, the best team in the league this season. We'll see if they can kind of maintain that. But yeah, at the moment, they have been not just the best team, but also the entertainers of the league too. A lot of their games have been extremely entertaining. But we'll kind of move away from Atletico Ottawa. We'll talk about the next game, and it was Cavalry traveling to Halifax. Yeah, not a good week for Halifax. Starting last weekend, a 0-0 draw to Forge. Probably could have gotten maybe something out of that game. And then, of course, going out in the Canadian Championship to Forge, as Forge won it 3-1. And now here, losing to Cavalry. And I think the keeper for Halifax will maybe feel like he could have done a little bit better. Yesley, I think he could have done a little bit better on some of the goals scored by Cavalry here. And I think for Halifax, it is just disappointing because they have started the season so well. And then to kind of run into Cavalry, who have had an up and down start to their season, you might, if you're Halifax, you might be thinking, okay, maybe we can get something here. It's not the case on the day, of course, because Warshevsky and Musi ended up just locking in and played very well. And yeah, I mean, of course, it is still early days in the season, but yeah, not an ideal week for the Wanderers. But they have shown that they are a good team. They have a lot of good players, still sitting second in the league as well. So they have shown that they have more than enough to be competing with the best teams. I think it's just a matter of finding that consistency and showing up against those best teams, if you know what I'm saying. The last game of the weekend was Pacific versus York. And this one was won late on in the 92nd minute. The winner for Pacific was scored by Montejano, and I had said last weekend, before this game when I did my CPL predictions, I had said that this feels like the game between the two teams that are doing well but not seeing the results over the finish line. And that kind of felt like it was ringing true for the day, because once again, York United goes up first and doesn't see it out. They concede a penalty in the 44th minute. Zanata dispatches of that. And then, of course, at least a draw is better than a loss kind of thing. And then in the 92nd minute, they concede the winner by Pacific. You can tell that there is a good team with York, and they made some very good signings. That's why I was so impressed with some of the signings that they have made in the offseason. And it just kind of feels like they just can't see it over the line, if you know what I'm saying. And it's a shame, especially if you're a York fan, of course, because you can see the talent and the players on display, and you can see that they're capable of getting leads. It's a matter of being capable of seeing those leads out, and so far, they haven't really been able to, and have conceded late on in different games now this season. Atletico Ottawa comes to mind, now Pacific, games where they should at least be leaving with a point, and then they don't. They leave with nothing. And it's just something that I think York needs to figure out, because you can tell there's a proper team here. There's very good talent there. Some very good signings made in the offseason. And they just haven't been able to stick it out and see it over the line. Of course, it is still early in the season, so it's early enough to fix this. And I do think that they will. I do genuinely believe that they will, because like I said, I just think that they're quite good. So I feel like they can figure it out and definitely see it out. On the other side of that, Pacific have also been a team that I think have been good but have struggled to get results. And on the day, credit to them, they did not stop fighting for that winner, and they end up getting it. So credit to Pacific. They had did what, one of these two teams needed to do on the day, and it was basically prove me wrong and say, you know what, we can grab a result, and Pacific do that. And once again, not that I doubt Pacific, it's just they've struggled to get results that I think have matched their performances. And the same kind of goes with York United. They've struggled to get results that have matched their performances, but I do think both teams are talented enough to figure it out and to get results that should match these performances. So we'll kind of wrap up our Maple start there. Of course, the CPL talk. Stick around for the end of this episode, where I will drop my predictions for next week's set of games. So let's get into the Prem recap. So what I'm actually going to do with this episode, I'm actually going to ditch the format for this one, just because I think there's a lot to talk about with each given team that is still fighting for something. So I want to kind of talk about those teams a little bit more, instead of, going through and saying, oh, well, this team has already been relegated, their season's over. Liverpool's already won the league, so, their season's kind of over. Of course, I will end up talking about Liverpool, because I'll be talking about their opponent's Arsenal. But you kind of get what I'm saying, right? So I'm kind of going to ditch the moment of the weekend, the biggest underwhelmers, whatnot. And I'm just going to kind of talk about the teams that still have something to kind of play for. Do you know what I'm saying? If you don't, you kind of will extremely soon. What I'm kind of talking about here is the guys that are chasing Europe, because that's kind of where a lot of the attention lies with this weekend in particular, because a lot is to be said about some of these teams fighting for those spots. Whereas, like I kind of said, the three teams have already been relegated, right? So I will give a quick word to, guys like United and Tottenham. I will say, I understand it's how the Europa League works, right? The winner of the competition gets into the Champions League for the next season. I will say, it is a bit of a slap in the face to anybody that's watched the Premier League this season, and say Villa and Chelsea don't make the top 5 and get Champions League. they're going to have to watch a Manchester United or Tottenham team who are going to finish anywhere between 15th and 17th. One of them will win the Europa League and will be playing Champions League football next season, having finished, say, 16th in the league. And like I said, I understand that's the rule for Europa League. I get it, but that's absurd to me. These teams at the top of the table, right? Well, not the top of the table, but closer to the Champions League spots. They've surely, right? Just give them the spot, it's going to an English team anyways, the winner of the Europa League. So just give it to one of the guys that misses out on Champions League, because it's kind of absurd to me that United are having their worst ever season and could end up finishing in a Champions League position, even though they are closer to relegation than Europe. And same goes for Tottenham, one of their worst seasons ever. And it would be so Tottenham though if their worst season ever, they get, this is the season where they break their duck and get a trophy. That'd be kind of funny. I can't even lie. But yeah, it's just very bizarre to me, I guess. But we'll kind of, stop talking about those two. Let's talk about the goings on for Europe. Where do I begin? Because it feels like a lot of teams dropped some points this weekend that they should not have dropped. I'll just begin we'll go chronological, I guess. So, Aston Villa. We'll start with Villa because them and City played at the same time. So we'll go with Aston Villa first. Aston Villa with a big win over Bournemouth. Bournemouth's woes, in all fairness, continue as they... I feel so bad. They're kind of the victims of their own success in a sense, because they started the season so well, and now that their form has kind of died off and dipped down a little bit, it kind of feels like a disappointing season, or at least disappointing end to the season, because of how good they were at the start of the season. Whereas if you had told Bournemouth fans, you guys are gonna get, we'll say they finish, ninth. You guys are going to get ninth and be one of the most entertaining teams, not just in the Prem, but in Europe to watch. I think they'd probably be very happy with that, And maybe they still are. I obviously don't really know any Bournemouth fans, so maybe they are extremely happy with it. But it just kind of feels like an ending not indicative of a great season that they have had. Because in all fairness, guys, remember, this is Bournemouth. Like, no disrespect to Bournemouth, because they have carved out like a good little niche, like they are a good club and have really built themselves into a Premier League status kind of club, following, being promoted through the five leagues and then getting to the Premier League, being in the Prem for so long, then getting relegated, then bouncing back up to the Prem and staying in the Prem. And now they're mid-table guys, potentially pushing for Europe. In a different season. But yeah, it kind of is a shame, because I think they kind of deserved a little bit better of an ending. But Aston Villa is another team that has kind of struggled with ups and downs this season, as I think that is, outside of Liverpool, I would say that is the common thread for all Premier League teams this season, just to varying degrees. The teams chasing Europe, I think it's a massive up and down season, and each one of them has been just so inconsistent, whereas their highs have been phenomenal, but their lows have been embarrassing, if you catch what I'm saying. Even if you want to move away from the European chasers, you still have guys like Wolves, who were technically fighting relegation for a while, and now they're finishing the season on fire. West Ham started this season up and down and are going to be finishing in around 40-45 points. Manchester United have been terrible this season, but could still finish with the trophy. Same goes for Tottenham. And Everton started the season terribly. Bring in Moyes, they're ending it on fire as well. So yeah, just one of those seasons where it feels like nobody has found consistency outside of the champs, of course. But Aston Villa get a big time win here, because not only it's clinched them European football, regardless. So they will be playing in Europe. It's just a matter of what competition they will be playing in. And, maybe a week or two ago, you're thinking Champions League feels a bit ambitious for Aston Villa. Not anymore. Not after the results this weekend. Aston Villa sitting in 6th and just a few points separating them and all the other chasers. So that's absolutely massive. And the difference maker here on the day, of course, I've been big upping him literally all season. Morgan Rogers and Ollie Watkins, the two difference makers on the day in terms of the score line for Aston Villa, because Morgan Rogers plays Ollie Watkins scores, and this is where you need a class striker. Don't worry, I will get to class strikers in a little bit, but Ollie Watkins is definitely up there with one of the best strikers in the league, in my humble opinion, especially when he's fully flowing. He's very good, because he's more than just like your poacher number 9 kind of guy. He does a lot, and he's kind of shown why you need a striker to be serious. He's gotten them some big goals in his time at the club, and this one could be a very big one if they do end up getting themselves into the Champions League spots, because this is absolutely massive. Aston Villa, like I said, felt ambitious maybe a week or two ago, but now it's a genuine thing. Aston Villa could make the return to Champions League after getting ousted by PSG in the quarterfinals. Now you're going to have Aston Villa in these last 2 games of the season fighting for it. They are level on points with Chelsea, who are in 5th, Villa, of course, in 6th, a point ahead of Forest, who were in 3rd for a lot of the season, who are now in 7th. Just 2 points behind Manchester City and 3 points behind Newcastle. Newcastle in 3rd, City in 4th. So Aston Villa, credit to them. Whereas I have been critical of a lot of these teams being inconsistent, Aston Villa, of course, have been one of those teams. But coming alive at the end here, when you are still in the race, is absolutely vital. So we'll see if they have enough to get into the Champions League spots. But yeah, I mean, I think it's absolutely huge for them. So congratulations to Aston Villa on the win and for keeping their Champions League hopes alive. And congratulations to them for getting Europe for, is this the 3rd season in a row now that they'll be in European competition? Yeah, because last season they were Europa Conference. This season they were in Champions League. And then next season it's TBD which competition they will be in, but they will be in a competition. So that's absolutely massive. When Unai Emery took over, I don't think even the most optimistic Aston Villa fan would have dreamt of this. But my goodness, keep dreaming, boys, because it's genuinely spectacular. They're one of my favorite teams to watch in the Champions League. They were just so entertaining. They've been a very fun team to watch this season in the Prem as well. Once again, just so entertaining. Such great talent there. Guys like Jacob Ramsey, Morgan Rogers, Ollie Watkins, Marco Asensio, who came in on loan, Malin, Marcus Rashford, looking reborn under Unai Emery. And their defense as well. Kwanzaa is the Liverpool guy. Konsa is the Aston Villa player. My apologies. But yeah, just Matty Cash as well. I love Matty Cash. Just a very good team, a great manager who, if it wasn't for Arne Slot, I think he could probably be claiming Unai Emery as one of the managers or the manager of the season. But of course, I think you have to give it to Arne Slot. But yeah, take him out of the equation. I think you can make a case for Unai Emery because just what he's done with this Villa squad has been genuinely insane, and it looks like he's getting backing from the ownership. Of course, some of those guys I had mentioned had come in January, and they could potentially be coming in on permanence. So hopefully that does happen for them, and long may it continue for Villa, one of the sleeping giants for a very long time, and it looks like that sleeping giant could be around the corner from waking up. We will have to wait and see. And also, just a quick side note on potential managers of the season. Once again, it will be Slot, and should be Slot. Another guy I want to give his flowers to real quick, just because I'm not really talking about Brentford this episode, is Thomas Frank. What a job he's done with them. They're going to be finishing in the top 10, at least, maybe. But regardless, they're going to be finishing they could get up to over 60 points. That's absurd. Brentford Brentford could be a team getting over 60 points in the Premier League. I know for a lot of people it's about, well, what trophy did you win? What was your did you get into the European competitions? And to a degree, that is definitely the point and the meaning. But for a team like Brentford to have not only come up from the championship a couple seasons ago to stay up, we know how hard that is, to stay up and now become a Premier League regular and one of the hardest teams in the league to play, whilst also racking up near 60 points in a season and having guys like Wissa and Embuemo and Sharder and their goalkeeper Flecken all playing just absurdly good. Yeah, this guy's insane, and if I'm Brentford, I'm signing to a lifetime deal because, my goodness, there will be many suitors for Thomas Frank. So just wanted to quickly mention that because genuinely, just such a great season for them, and I feel harsh not to have mentioned them, so I had to mention them here. But next up, getting back into the European race, let's talk a little bit about Manchester City. They played already relegated and bottom of the table Southampton, who were really just playing to not be labeled the worst ever team in Premier League history. So pretty easy win for City, surely, right? No, it was not. It was a 0-0. Like I said, with the already relegated Southampton. I don't know what it is about the already relegated teams playing against guys chasing Europe this weekend, because Southampton's not the only one that took points off of a European chaser. A little more on that in a minute. But yeah, Manchester City felt like it was going to be like a walk in the park to 3 points. It wasn't a matter of when they would score. It was a matter of how many would they get, because yeah, it's Man City versus Southampton, already relegated Southampton against Manchester City chasing the top four to salvage their season. And it's 0-0. What's even crazier is Southampton have conceded 82 goals, and only one of them was against Manchester City. The reigning champions only put one past one of the worst ever teams in Premier League history. That's kind of crazy. But yeah, I mean, for Manchester City, I have been saying it feels like a pretty foregone conclusion that they will be getting one of the 5 spots for the Champions League. Not looking super easy at the moment now. I still do think they will be one of those teams, but it's not that foregone conclusion that I thought it would be. They have, next up, they have, Crystal Palace is in the FA Cup final, so that doesn't count. They have Bournemouth and Fulham, both teams that are, of course, not really playing for anything at the moment, but are still 2 very hard teams to play against and have shown that they will give you a run for your money. And I think that they could. Of course, you also could see City win both those games 5-0. But yeah, it doesn't feel as much as all right, well, when City going to clinch Champions League spots? Because this could come down to the wire, as it looks like it will come down to the wire for both City and many of the teams that are vying for those spots. But yeah, I don't really have a whole ton to say about Manchester City this weekend, just apart from I think it's disappointing for them and their fans, because like I said, you would expect them to have walked this Southampton team, and to not even put a goal in the back of the net is crazy to me. I will say, though, special shout out to the Southampton social media admin for their hilarious video that they put up, as Ruben Dias had said after the game that it didn't even feel like Southampton wanted to play football and they just wanted to go out there, run around, and waste some time. I'm paraphrasing, of course. You can find the actual direct quote in that TikTok video. Just go on to Southampton's TikTok. It is quite funny. So then Southampton's admin decided, well, let me just pile together all the wasted chances of Manchester City in the game and make a video compilation of it. And that's exactly what they did. And I found it very funny. Because, yeah, I mean, you can point fingers at Southampton and say it feels like they didn't want to play, blah, 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 blah. At the end of the day, you're Manchester City. You're the reigning champs, the reigning 4-time champs against the already relegated Southampton that everyone has beaten this year. And you couldn't get points off of them. to me, that's more of an indictment on you and your team as it is to the guys that you're playing. Because, yeah, Southampton, they don't have anything to play for anymore, apart from not being the worst team ever in Premier League history. Manchester City still have a lot to play for this season. And they don't. they don't show up. And, we'll see. I do still think Manchester City will be a team to get one of those Champions League spots. But, you never know. Surprises can happen because there was a few surprises this weekend. So that kind of wraps up this Saturday, boys. We'll talk a little bit about the Sunday games, and I will save Chelsea's for last just because I have naturally as a Chelsea fan, I have the most to say about Chelsea. So we're not doing this in chronological order. We're gonna go into Forest and Leicester. So remember when I said about City, there was two games where two already relegated teams kept points from teams trying to chase Europe. This is the other game. Leicester drew Forest 2-2. Ouch for Forest, at least. Now, to my understanding, there is a rivalry between Forest and Leicester, so that could be why Leicester, already relegated Leicester, got up for this game, because they know that the fans have been looking forward to this game, regardless of if they're going up, going down, well, not going up, staying up, or going down, and all that jazz. But yeah, just Morgan Gibbs-White tried his absolute best to get his team the 3 points here. Connor Cody grabs one for Leicester, and then Buonanotte grabbed the dagger, if you will, in the 81st minute. But yeah, Gibbs-White grabs a goal and an assist. Chris Wood back into the goals in this game. Anthony Alenga provides the assist for Morgan Gibbs-White. And for Forest, I think you're kind of sitting there going, what went wrong? Now, I will say, much like Bournemouth, it does feel like Forest are the victims of their own success because they were so good for so long this season that eventually they were inevitably going to hit a bad run of form. It just so happens that they hit that bad run of form at crunch time in this season. But even if they do or don't qualify for Champions League, don't take this away from Forest. No one expected this from Nottingham Forest, okay? Like, no one expected this from Nottingham Forest, and the fact that they're even in conversations to be in Europe next season is crazy, because last season, they were fighting relegation. Then Nuno said, all right, boys, time to lock in, let's go get Europe. By the way, Forest have mathematically qualified for Europe, much like Villa and every other team who is chasing Europe. They've qualified. They have qualified for Europe. It's just a matter of which competition they will be in. And for Forest, that's a return to Europe for the first time in literal decades. So that in and of itself is absolutely massive. But also at the same time, I guess I'm going to kind of contradict myself here because I'm saying in one breath, let's, maybe be a little bit easy on Forest because they were so good for so long and no one expected that. But then on the other hand, in the same breath, I also have to look and go, you can't crumble now. And that's exactly what's kind of happened. Now, they could, of course, as every team here could still get Europe. They could still get Europe. They already have gotten Europe, but you know what I mean. They could get Champions League still. Just the problem is, at crunch time, they kind of hit that bad form at the worst possible time. And yes, like I said, they had a great season and no one expected this. But also at the same time, when you were there for so long and it felt like you were going to get that Champions League spot. And now for you going into these last two games, being on the outside, I don't want to say on the outside looking in because it's still very much in every single one of these teams' hands, especially since Forest plays Chelsea on the last day of the season, another team that is chasing Europe, of course. It's still very much in Forest's hands, but they're making it a little bit more difficult on themselves, dropping points to an already relegated side in Leicester. This is a game you have to win. You have to win this game, especially, you get rocked early. Connor Cody scores in the 16th minute. Then you get one back. Then you go up in the 56th minute. You have to see that out. And you don't. And I think that's kind of indicative of this end of the season for Forest. Now, they may make me eat my words, and they may not only get Champions League, but could be at the expense of Chelsea. But they could genuinely still get Champions League. And I also, like I had said, I don't want to get lost. These guys have qualified for Europe. They're playing European football next season. After last season looking like they could have been relegated, they are playing European football next season. That, to me, is a successful season for Nottingham Forest, regardless of which competition it is. My only criticism is it feels like it should be Champions League after how good they were for so long this season. That's kind of where I stand on Nottingham Forest. So definitely, so far to this point, a successful season 1,000% because they are going to be in Europe, regardless of which competition that is. But then on the other hand, it is a shame that it's coming down to the wire for Forest, because it feels like right now they should have mathematically or been basically kind of like in an Arsenal position, 95% like confirmed, having watched Forest for the season. It really does feel like they should have wrapped it up, and they didn't. And that comes, I think, with a little bit of inexperience. And, also they were playing so high level-wise that eventually they were going to come down. But we will see. Of course, Nottingham Forest, regardless, still playing Europe next year and could still cost Chelsea a Champions League spot. So please don't do that. We'll move a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about Arsenal, and we'll kind of get into Chelsea right after that. So why don't we do that? As I have been saying all season, by the way, Mikel Arteta has taken this Arsenal team as far as he can. I have said it multiple times this season, and I will, I think, continue to say it. No Carabao Cup again. No FA Cup again. Champions League. He made those stupid comments after the game, basically saying we were the best team in the competition. The PSG coaching staff had apparently told him that they were better than PSG. I watched both legs. They were not. And then even Mikel Arteta was questioned. Well, which coaching staff member had said that? And he just said all of them, and then awkwardly moved on to the next question. Luis Enrique, the manager of PSG, was asked which member of staff it was. He literally laughed and said none of them. So that's funny. And have once again will look like they will be finishing second in the Premier League for the third season in a row. Now, Mikel Arteta, to his credit, has taken Arsenal from perennial banter club to genuine contenders that just can't get over the line. I do give him credit there. He has turned Arsenal Football Club around, but as I have done in the past, I will compare him to Mauricio Pochettino at Tottenham. He did an undeniably phenomenal job, genuinely, with Tottenham. Mikel Arteta has done an undeniably great job with Arsenal. He has taken them from laughingstock to contenders, whilst still kind of being laughingstocks, but that's more so on their antics rather than anything else. But they are genuinely, at the start of every season, for the last 3, Arsenal have been on the lips of many people as potential contenders for the Premier League. They went to the semifinals of the Champions League. Now, as a Chelsea fan, I'm very happy that they did not advance to the final and did go out in the semis. But still, that is impressive to get to the Champions League semifinal. The problem is now you have been quote-unquote impressive and close so many times that now it feels like you're just the guys that are going to be close. And the Liverpool fans kind of, I think, summed this up brilliantly as they had a sign for Mikel Arteta that had said, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. And that is exactly what it feels like for Arsenal Football Club at the moment. They just feel so close, but just not there. And it always comes down to the same excuses. It's always, we had injuries. We don't have a striker. I have heard those excuses now for 3 seasons. So at this point, you don't want a striker, obviously, because you have not signed a striker in these 3 seasons. Oh, well, we have Kai Havertz and he's injured. Kai Havertz is not a striker. I watched Kai Havertz sneak it up at Stamford Bridge for 3 years outside of one magical night in Porto. Okay, he is not a striker. He is not. And you can show me all the goals he has gotten for Arsenal. He's not a striker. You have Gabriel Jesus, who just can't stay. He just can't stay healthy. Jesus, he is a good striker. He just can't stay healthy. So you know that you can't count on him. And you have now known this for many seasons, and you are still reluctant to sign a striker. To me, at that point, it's on the manager and the recruiting staff for not getting the guys that they need to strengthen their team. And in the end, I think it's cost them in all fronts. It's cost them in the Champions League. It's cost them in the Premier League, and it's cost them in the cup competitions. And I don't think it's going to change until they bring in these guys, and I think genuinely bring in a manager that it will win. That's my opinion. I don't think Arsenal are going to get rid of Arteta. And as I've always said, I never want to see someone lose their job, of course. But from a club standpoint, funnily enough, kind of like I had said with the Vancouver Whitecaps, to tie it back into our Canadian MLS boys, Sartini was a good coach for the Whitecaps. He just couldn't get them. He just couldn't get them to that next level. And now Jesper Sorensen, he's gotten them performing so well into a Champions Cup final, leading the Supporters' Shield race. Whereas now, that's kind of how I feel about Arteta. He feels like they're Sartini, where he has undeniably, he's done a great job with them. He has. But he just can't get them over that line. And that's kind of what I think it is. So they've now gone out and recruited another defensive midfielder. They have an insane number of defenders, left backs, right backs, center backs. They still, though, yet to have a proper striker. And as I kind of just said with Watkins a few moments ago, you need a striker in these big moments to get you those goals. And Arsenal just don't have that at the moment, in my humble opinion. But Arsenal fans may disagree. They probably would, honestly. But that's just how I feel. Liverpool, I really don't have anything to say about Liverpool this weekend. The league title's wrapped up. They went up 2-0, then conceded 2, and they get a draw. So, it doesn't really matter for Liverpool anymore, now does it? So we'll kind of finally move into Chelsea-Newcastle, because this was probably the biggest game for the guys chasing Europe. Well, Champions League. I keep saying Europe. I'm referring to Champions League. It feels like the biggest game because both of these teams are chasing those spots, and it is Newcastle who will be the happier of the two. And yeah, this one hurt. This one hurt a lot, honestly, genuinely. As a Chelsea fan, this one stung a good little bit. So where do we begin? Firstly, credit to Newcastle. I feel like I'm probably going to lose Newcastle a little bit in this, so I want to give them their credit now up front before I start talking about Chelsea, because inevitably I will just end up talking about Chelsea a lot more than I will be talking about Newcastle, being a Chelsea fan. But I do want to give Newcastle their credit. They got 2 goals and they won the game. And this was a massive game for them because not only was it 3 points for them, it was 3 points taken away from one of their Champions League rivals. Sandro Tonali scored 2 minutes in, and then in the 90th minute, Bruno scored to wrap it up. And that was the true dagger to the heart. Genuinely felt like I had been stabbed. But yeah, credit to Newcastle. That is huge. They probably could have had a few more on the day. And in the first half, I thought it was all them, honestly. And this game felt like a tale of two halves, despite nothing. It felt like a tale of two halves because I thought Newcastle was far and away the better team in the first half. And then the second half, I thought Chelsea was the far better side. They just didn't end up getting anything to show for it, So it's time. Let's talk about Chelsea. So yes, credit to Newcastle, but we are going to talk about Chelsea. So the only thing that I will say from Enzo Maresca that actually disappointed me today, and I know, whoa, Sam, you're going to praise Enzo Maresca? Haven't you been pretty critical of him for most of the season? Yes, I have been. And I will be critical of him here. Caicedo should not have started at right back. Reece James should have started right back. Caicedo should have started in the midfield. Hindsight is 2020. I get that. I don't like Caicedo as the right back. He is, in my opinion, the best midfielder that we have. And in my opinion, the best midfielder in his position, like as a defensive midfielder in the league. That's just my opinion. But yeah, he should be playing in the midfield and Reece James should be playing at right back. We looked with 10 men. We looked better with Reece at right back and Caicedo in the midfield than we did with 11 men with Reece on the bench and Caicedo at right back. So that is where I do fault Enzo Maresca. I do not fault him for literally everything after that. I thought he actually genuinely managed a very good game, and it just came down to Chelsea had 10 men and Newcastle had 11. And there is one man to blame for this, and I hate to scapegoat, but it is Nicholas Jackson. It's an embarrassing play. It's a play that could genuinely cost Chelsea Champions League football. Could lead to a lot of Chelsea players giving up on the project. It could genuinely have a massive ripple effect for Chelsea because not only does Nicholas Jackson miss the rest of the Newcastle game when he gets sent off, and Chelsea, of course, goes on to lose, he also misses Manchester United on Friday and then Nottingham Forest, leaving Chelsea without a recognized striker for the last 2 games of the season, our last 2 finals of the season, because I've been harping on that these last 6 games they were hard. They're going to be hard, and they have been difficult, even though Chelsea have gotten results outside of course, Newcastle. Chelsea have gotten results, but none of those games were easy. And now you've left your team without a recognized striker. The positive that I think can come from this, if there is one, is I think you will see Moises Caicedo slotted into the midfield and Reece James into the starting 11, because I think that this is how Chelsea should at least line up. I think you're going to go Robert Sanchez, of course, in goal. We don't have anybody else. Then you go Cucurella at left back, Colwell, Chalobah, or Tosin in the center back spots. Then Reece James at right back because he's healthy. Use him, please. Enzo Fernandez, Lavia, and Caicedo in the midfield. Then you're probably going to have to play Neto through the middle, as we did when Jackson was out and Nkunku was not performing. And then probably Madueke, at least against United, because Sancho cannot play against his parent club. And then Cole Palmer, both of them kind of playing as left wing and right wing, with Palmer, of course, probably floating and roaming a little bit more. And I think that could be good, because I think that you'll be seeing some good in Chelsea. And I think that you saw that these players are up for it. I know they did lose. They did. And regardless of the loss, though, I think you saw that these guys want it. Because 10 men with, 50 minutes to go, 55 minutes to go when Jackson sent off, 10 men, they played very well. Marc Cucurella, what a performance. Moises Caicedo, great performance. I thought Pedro Neto was extremely positive. Reece James, when he came on, was so good. So I think you do see this team, I think they want it. I think it's a matter of if they get it. It's in their hands 100%, as it is with every team still chasing Europe. It is in their hands. The thing that concerns me and has always concerned me is Manchester United, regardless of how bad they're playing, always show up for Chelsea, and vice versa. Regardless of how bad Chelsea are playing, they show up for Manchester United. It's just one of those games that both teams kind of get up for, and I think there's going to be the added bite because, of course, Mason Mount. And all that drama. And then, of course, last day of the season is Nottingham Forest at Nottingham Forest, the home team. It's going to be difficult, but I think Chelsea can hopefully do it. It kind of feels like the footballing gods were kind of trying to give someone a helping hand this weekend, with every team outside of like Newcastle dropping points that are chasing those Champions League spots. Oh, and of course, Villa, sorry, my apologies. So Forest, Chelsea, and City all kind of dropping points, and Arsenal too. They didn't win either, but I think that they're, like I've been saying, they're like 95% of the way there. But yeah, it feels like the footballing gods were kind of trying to help someone this weekend, and it was inevitably Villa and Newcastle. But I think these results could ripple through the next two games, and I think you could kind of see a pseudo butterfly effect, if you will, to see which of these teams gets it. So yeah, in essence, Nicholas Jackson, absolutely embarrassing. I think that's terrible to do to your team, to do to your fans, to do to your manager, to do to the coaching staff, and to do to yourself too. For me, I think it starts up another conversation for Chelsea to get a striker, because we know that Nicholas Jackson, he hasn't set the world alight for Chelsea, and I think, as I've been saying, with guys like Ollie Watkins, Chris Wood even showing up this weekend. I know Forest ended up dropping points, but Chris Wood showed up big for them. These guys have strikers that have shown up for them. Chelsea have not had that in a very long time, but especially in this new Bully Clear Lake era. They haven't had that. So they need to kind of get that, is what I'm saying. And that's why I'm kind of, at the start, I mentioned Jonathan David to Napoli. If I'm Chelsea, I'm contacting Jonathan David today and asking him, how much a week do you want? Because you know he's probably not going to want more than $200,000 a week. And I know he's not going to want more than that. But I just genuinely, I don't think he's going to be asking for really a whole lot more than that. And I think he'll be worth it. And he will get you goals. He's a good player overall. He's not just a striker, kind of like Ollie Watkins, as I was saying. He does more than just score goals. That's Jonathan David. He does so much more than just score goals. I think he would be absolutely vital to this Chelsea team. But only time will tell what they're going to do. I think Nicholas Jackson has really dug himself and Chelsea a hole, and I think it's absolutely embarrassing and terrible. I understand red cards happen, but that red card was unnecessary, and it was stupid, quite frankly. And that's a shame, because I have backed Nicholas Jackson in his time at Chelsea. But some things are just kind of unforgivable, and that kind of feels like one of those things. So we'll have to wait and see how Chelsea bounces back against Manchester United. And to kind of wrap up our Prem talk, I'll kind of take you through the next two games for each of these teams. So, of course, as I just mentioned, Chelsea have United and then Forest in the final days of the Premier League. Arsenal, I know they have Newcastle at some point. They have Newcastle next and then Southampton on the last day of the season. So Newcastle will be tricky. I do expect them to get something from Southampton, but Newcastle could be very tricky. Manchester City, I think I already had mentioned what they have. I did, but we'll say it again. Bournemouth and Fulham. Then, of course, Chelsea, and then Aston Villa, the Europa League finalists. They have Tottenham, and they have Manchester United. It depends on which of those teams shows up for them. If they have good Tottenham and good United, or bad Tottenham and bad United. I don't think either one of those is easy, by the way. I think those will be very tricky games for Aston Villa. I don't think that is a walk in the park. And then finally, wrapping up with Nottingham Forest, they have West Ham and Chelsea, as we know. So yeah, I think Chelsea hopefully is... Chelsea wins that. But yeah, West Ham could be a very winnable game for Nottingham Forest. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, that'll wrap up our Prem talk. And very quickly, we will, of course, let out our CPL predictions for this coming week. So this will be match week 7 for the CPL, starting on Tuesday with Forge and Atletico Ottawa. Of course, you know me, I'm never going against Forge, even though Atletico Ottawa are friggin' brilliant this season. I feel unconfident in saying the Forge are going to win this just because Ottawa have been so good. I'm going to go with like a 3-3 thriller just because, why not? And then Valor and York, I do think York have this one. I think York are going to win that one, and we'll say York are going to win it 2-1. Then you have Pacific and Cavalry. Ooh, I've been enjoying Pacific, but You know what? Screw it. Yeah, we'll say Pacific pull off the upset. We're going to go Pacific 1-0. Definitely not going to, even if Pacific do win, it will not be a 1-0 game. Then Vancouver and Halifax. I've been a big fan of Vancouver, of course, this season. I've been a big proponent of them. But Halifax are due a win. So I'm so sorry, Vancouver. I have been backing you all season, and that is not stopping. But it is on pause for this one just because I don't think Halifax will drop more points. We're going to go with a 2-0 win for Halifax, but I will be hoping that Vancouver do win that one. And yeah, with that will wrap up this episode of the Maple Footy Podcast. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed. This episode was a lot longer than I thought it was going to be, but I had a little bit more talk about, having kind of just talked about the guys fighting for Europe. So thank you for listening to this extra long Maple Footy Podcast. I hope you enjoyed. And, of course, I will be covering the remainder of the Premier League season and continuing with the CPL coverage as well and all the other Canadian happenings. You know the deal. But, yes, thank you so much. And until next time, cheers, everyone.
And that was your Maple Footy Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Check my socials for any and all future updates. Remember to support Canadian football, be kind, and until next time, live, laugh, little.